The Tall Man in the Cornfield. November 2012, Damascus, Maryland. Before 2012, the evidence simply wasn't there that any genetically modified corn widely available in the market posed a danger to humans. Despite this, conspiracy theorists from both the right and the left had long been united in their disdain for GMOs, but without much in the way of corroborating facts to substantiate their fears. Alternative media sources had been dismissed as merely promulgating crackpot theories, such as government agencies using food sources to slowly change human DNA over time. No one took them seriously, of course. Everything began to change in 2012, when Maryland's agricultural industry was given a much-needed boost, one that came from an outside source. FDA Inspector August McHenry stepped out of a rundown Pontiac Sunfire that had at one time been white. The gray, sullen man approached the secluded farmhouse with curiosity. Despite having a haggard appearance and short stature, August was still imposing. His broad shoulders and strong physique from decades of a dogged weightlifting hobby betrayed his otherwise weather-worn posture and demeanor. His wrinkled, gaunt cheeks rested upon an anvil of a jaw. From records he had access to as part of his investigation, August observed that, accompanied only by a few nearby silos, this was one of the only family-owned farms in Montgomery County that still garnered a significant profit. August McHenry knew that his assignment was part of a much grander investigation. It wasn't every day that multiple agents from the FBI teamed up with FDA inspectors like himself on a single case. McHenry didn't know much about the larger case. The only information he had was what he was tasked with asking. A gust of air jostled McHenry's woolen coat and gently disturbed the corn stalks that surrounded the house in every direction. "Warm air for November," he noted. He knocked 3 times on the door. It didn't take long for a young man with dirty blonde hair to creak open the door, with overalls on his lanky body and a smile on his sunburned face. "You must be Mr. McHenry," offered the man with a country accent. "Welcome." He waved his hand inward. "Mr. Andrews," checked August. "Yes, but please, call me Brian." Brian Andrews had a long yellow beard that came down just past his neck. He took McHenry's fedora and gray overcoat, and offered iced tea, which August declined. After a moment more of pleasantries, the tired-looking FDA inspector began. "So I hope you understand that this is necessary protocol. In addition to what we already spoke about on the phone, I note that your corn is shipped and sold as organic, but we actually don't know much about it." "How do you mean?" asked Brian Andrews. "Well, you purchased this farm practically overnight," said McHenry. "This land had been unused for about a decade. As of now, you're the only grower of this new species of corn that was engineered by Biotendrin Corporation, a biomedical corporation we know next to nothing about, except for the fact that they now, apparently, make designer crops. It doesn't look like you had any connection to Biotendrin before you acquired the property." "I get it." He sat across a round wooden table from McHenry. "You're wondering how a little guy like me who doesn't even have agrarian roots could get so lucky as to be the sole grower of this corn." "Yes," nodded August without smiling. To the farmer's surprise, the FDA inspector then pulled out a small ear of corn from his pants pocket, wrapped neatly in a plastic baggie, and placed it on the table. Mr. Andrews laughed. "Well, sir, is that an ear of corn in your pocket, or are you just happy to see me?" Ignoring his joke, August continued. "This corn was submitted to the FDA for testing and passed inspection without a problem. It definitely has a genome different than any other corn we've tested, but there seems to be no difference in size, color, or nutrition. The phenotype is the same as far as our techs can tell." We don't know why Biotendron engineered this, or what makes it special. We also don't know how the profits are so high for such a small farm. Am I in some sort of trouble? Asked Andrews. Look, Biotendron has proprietary rights to a lot of their corporate research and all that mumbo-jumbo. And so do I, for that matter. Or are you guys just investigating Biotendron in general because they're new? You're not in trouble, Mr. Andrews, said August. But I can't comment on Biotendron Corporation outside of how it directly affects you and your farm. What I want to know is how your costs are so low. Simple, smiled the farmer. Most corn takes nitrogen out of the soil. This stuff actually doesn't do that, so we don't need to cycle it. It keeps the soil fertile. It also really doesn't take much in the way of fertilizer and whatnot, or even a lot of water to keep it healthy. This stuff grows like a weed, rain or shine. Andrews laughed at the last part. Showing some exasperation, August ran his thick fingers through his short gray hair. I took high school chemistry and biology, Brian. That's not how corn works. Corn depletes nitrogen. Someone's either cooking the books, sending us phony samples, or else you're trying to tell me this is magic corn. Magic corn? Laughed Andrews. I'll have to tell the folks who invented it that. Could be a good marketing avenue. Well, that's not too far from what I've been calling it. Angel corn. You know, angel investors, angel designers, heavenly taste. It's angel corn. But seriously, sir, nope, everything is on the up and up. It's just good quality corn. And the fact that it's GMO shouldn't scare nobody. Most food is these days. They just found a way to make it easier to grow and still taste good. August looked at his host with disturbed scrutiny. There was nothing off-putting on the surface about the man he spoke with. He could not guess his age except that the bearded farmer must have been younger than him by a couple decades or more. Despite his cheerful demeanor and appearance, there was something off about Andrews. Behind his smile, there was a coldness, like a spider's eyes. Before you go, by the way, Ryan Andrews said suddenly as if remembering something, can I offer you some cornbread? Made it myself from the corn outside. Seems appropriate. No thanks, said McHenry. I'm deathly allergic. Never touch anything with corn in it. Ha! Blurted out Andrews. Let me get this straight. The FDA corn inspector is allergic to corn. Let me ask you something else, August said, ignoring him. Why corn? What do you mean? Laughed the jovial farmer as he chewed loudly on the homemade bread. You worked at a government data center before this. You have a degree in computer science. None of it's connected. You must have made more money before this. The amicable man stopped chewing for a moment, apparently in reverie. You ever just want to start over, Mr. McHenry? Just hit the reset button and give a second shot at life. The weathered gray man didn't make any facial expression with his hollow, sunken cheeks, or break eye contact as he waited for Andrews to continue. Every day, he thought. Yeah, I wanted to start over. Farming, growing food. You know, corn is a staple. A staple means basic foodstuffs, life-giving. He seemed to gaze at the piece of cornbread he was taking bites from, even as he spoke. Every culture has their own staple. Often it's rice or something else. But what could be more American than corn? Now he looked August in the eye, and no longer had the smarmy, neighborly smile he was wearing before. His eyes were as cold and focused as McHenry's, but somehow more purposeful. August broke the silence. So you're attracted to corn's what? Purity? Purity! Exclaimed Andrews, pointing a finger upward. That's the perfect way to describe it. Purity indeed. Pure, life-giving energy. Are you familiar with Vitae, Mr. McHenry? The concept of Vitae? No. It's sort of an ancient concept, old as the idea of the ether. It basically means life essence. Ancient peoples believe that your life essence is in your blood, and in a way they're right. As a basic food staple, corn can keep the blood sugar up, which keeps you moving, keeps you alive. The basics of life-giving food is the energy, of course. That's not all corn does, scoffed August McHenry. It's also pumped into almost everything as corn syrup because companies like Biotendrin buy off politicians who in turn destroy food regulation and make my job a lot harder. Times are changing, said the blonde man. Folks don't want Uncle Sam telling them what's good for them. Besides, corn syrup is just a mean way of saying it's the natural sugar that corn gives us. Our bodies break down food into sugar to use as energy anyway. Cut out the middleman. August nodded, regretting he let his opinions blurt out. But he didn't like the queasy feeling in his stomach. It wasn't just that the hayseed was waxing philosophical. Something about this man made him feel sick. After a few more questions that only led to additional bewilderment, August snatched his hat and coat and left the lonely farmhouse on the outskirts of Damascus, its fog-riddled cornstalks far behind him. He didn't gain much in the way of answers, but he did know that there were now a dozen cases in Maryland of individuals, mostly children, getting sick with some kind of unknown illness, and all of them had recently eaten corn that could be tracked to this one farm. They were all locals, and the connection to the farm would be nearly impossible to prove. His hunch was that the FBI was also working with the IRS to look at potential tax fraud and a host of other white-collar crimes, likely under the belt of the obscure new biomedical company that had developed corn into a true cash crop in the state. August lived in Rockville, Maryland, in a townhouse with his son Kevin. They got along fine, but weren't especially close either. His son was quiet, and August had a reputation as a bit of a grouch. August's wife was the one who had held their family together. When she died a year earlier, both husband and son collapsed into themselves. August delved into work, and Kevin immersed himself in his studies, studying martial arts, military history, and strategy, and training himself physically with a boot camp-like mentality. Both men were strong, but unlike his father, Kevin was tall and stood upright. In the time since he had graduated high school, Kevin had developed ambitions to join the Marines, but August had convinced his son to at least take college courses first, before enlisting. Kevin knew his father hoped to dissuade him in the interval. He was an avid firearm enthusiast, and much to the horror of his father, the 21-year-old spent many hours at the shooting range with a Desert Eagle. Every morning, August took the Red Line to DuPont Circle in Washington, D.C. His office was nearby, and he hoped that a fresh pot of coffee was already waiting for him as he took the elevator to the 5th floor of their building. It was good to be inside. It wasn't an especially cold morning, but something about the mist that stubbornly gripped the cityscape lately chilled him to the bone. He found himself looking over his shoulder more than once, unable to shake the furtive sensation that he was being followed. After his coffee and a few emails, August began going over some paperwork he had put off for far too long when a manic young man in a stained white t-shirt stormed into his office, carrying a laptop under one arm. "Are you August McHenry?" the boy screamed more than asked. "It's imperative that I talk to you." He was followed swiftly by their office's administrative assistant. "I'm sorry, sir," the flustered woman remarked. "I told him he's got to make an appointment. He just barged in." "Leslie, it's fine," said August. "I'll speak with him." Once they were alone with McHenry's office door closed, he continued. "Yes, I'm Mr. McHenry. Sit down, kid. Catch your breath. What's the matter?" "Okay," the flustered boy said, still gasping. "I'm a student at Montgomery College. I'm studying cybersecurity, data storage, I try to do ethical hacking and stuff like that. I'm actually really involved with SEO analysis and also the dark web, and kid, I don't care about any of that," McHenry interrupted calmly. "This is a federal government building. What's your name, and what do you want?" "Oh, sorry. My name is Pete Thurmond. This is going to sound weird, but you've got to believe me. The corn. The new species of corn that Biotendron Corporation developed. It changes human behavior. Pete's frantic speech was devoid of pauses or breaths. He gestured wildly as he continued. I think it makes people more, agreeable. It makes people less skeptical, less inquisitive, just like happy, like it changes their DNA. It actually permanently changes their brain chemistry, I'm pretty sure. I mean, I don't know how it does it, but if they keep eating it, it basically turns them into zombies, or maybe that's just a side effect. The main thing it does, it may also makes them edible. Stop, said McHenry. Any investigation by the FDA into new food is not public information. How do you claim to know any of this? Pete's breathing was more regular now, but he still had a few beads of sweat on his furrowed brow. Remember how I mentioned the ethical hacking and computer stuff? Yeah, so I found out that way. I'm sorry, I got curious. It actually didn't start with trying to find secrets. I was actually just using the FDA as an example for a search engine ranking study I was doing. I got the idea from your son. You know my son? August leaned forward, his eyes even more intense than before. Yeah, Kevin and I are friends. He's a couple years older, but we have a couple classes together. He mentioned you were an FDA inspector or investigator and all that. So I thought it would be cool to start with the FDA as an agency to see if I could crack into. I wasn't going to mess anything up, just see if I could. But then it started like being connected with digital files and documents related to FBI investigations. And it looks like even some CIA stuff that I still can't quite crack into. Son, started McHenry, listen to me carefully. If this is a joke, it ain't funny. I work for the federal government, and what you're talking about are felonies. I know. Pete Thurmond held up his hands as if ordered to freeze. That's why I wasn't going to tell you, but this crap is way too serious. And now I think they know about me. I think they're going to try, I don't know what, but like someone needs to know this stuff. I'm not making up anything. With practiced finesse, the college student sitting in front of August swung open his laptop and aimed the screen at the old FDA inspector. We have documents, emails, photographs, but I'm scared out of my mind to talk to anyone else. Pete's frantic voice turned into a harsh whisper. Look, I'm with a secret group. We call ourselves the Xeno Resistance. We plan to fight back. We've been following this for about a year, get it? Learning everything we can, training for what we might have to do, if we even have to do it. Kevin said you wouldn't blow the whistle on me, that you would listen to me. I am listening, growled August. His eyes were agape as he pored over the screen that glowed in front of him. If this is legitimate, then what I'm looking at means this corn was engineered using some kind of new tech I've never heard of. Something that hasn't even been patented. Alien technology, murmured Pete. What? Alien technology. Look, I know it sounds crazy, but what if aliens are real? What if they can be made to look like us, talk like us, maybe eat like us? Sir, haven't you wondered how a species of corn that is allegedly grown from a single farm could have so much influence already? What if the corn has multiple functions? August didn't answer. Mr. McHenry, have you heard of the legend of the tall man in the fields? It's popular around Montgomery County and Gaithersburg and Rockville and nearby places, right? It's kind of like old folklore meant to scare kids who played too far from home, right? Who stayed out in the dark too late? It's connected. It's based in fact. McHenry shifted awkwardly in his chair. Aliens and the tall man in the fields. You're right, kid, August said. That does sound crazy. Look, Pete, you're a smart young guy, and it's nice that you're friends with my son, but whatever frauds or skullduggery is going on, I will find out, or another agency will. You're completely misusing your intelligence. Whatever it turns out to be, I guarantee you that no aliens are involved. McHenry let out a forced laugh at the last part, then the lights suddenly turned off. Damn, another brownout. We've had him the last few days, working on the power grid. Pete became suddenly terrified at the flickering of the lights. Look, sir, take this. He pulled out something from the left pocket on his jeans. It was a silver flash drive. I'm trusting you with this, Mr. McHenry. Everything I told you, everything I showed you and more is on this. Don't let anyone take this. Don't let anyone see this until you figure out exactly who should. And remember, a look of horror flashed across Pete's face. Every kernel is one of their seeds. Don't eat any, or he will come to fertilize you. Pete then looked over his shoulders in a jerking motion, as if expecting to be pounced on. He shoved the flash drive into August's hands, and then shut his laptop, leaving in a slight jog after closing the office door behind him. August didn't sleep at all that night. He was kept awake not only by how startling the information was on the flash drive he was given, but also by the grim truth that he found parts of it convincing. With his collar ruffled and his necktie half undone, he laid on his mattress with arms stretched wide and eyes glaring up at his bedroom ceiling. Maybe me and this kid both just need a psychiatrist, he thought. The strangest part of all the paranoid rantings on the flash drive was the idea that alien creatures could somehow find a way to take over the body and brain of a human. It was clear that Pete believed the hypothetical alien race could not yet live on Earth of their own accord, but were making the planet ready by commandeering the lives of regular people until the entire human race could be made to re-engineer the Earth so that it was more comfortable for a colony of the alien beings. Invasion of the Body Snatchers, scoffed August, calming himself down. Aliens possessing people was a popular enough cliché in science fiction and horror, and it was no surprise that there were some who believed it to be true. Graphs, charts, and supposedly classified documents were no proof of the theory's veracity, no matter how convincing the data seemed at first blush, August noted to himself. This was a hoax, and the only real conspiracy was likely of an agricultural company trying to cut corners with red tape and regulation. August planned to shut down such a scheme utterly. Before almost falling asleep, August heard the old rhyme from his childhood about the tall man in the fields. He used to have nightmares thinking of the 7-foot-tall being who came out in the dark of night and snatched up the children who went and played too far away from home. A piece of folklore and myth pretty much exclusive to rural Maryland. The old jump rope rhyme he remembered from elementary school echoed in his throbbing brain.
Tall man will find you alone. Better not stay out too late, or the tall man will seal your fate. Every kernel is a seal to his field. Body's feet, don't make a noise, don't make a sound. When the tall man comes around, if the tall man starts coming your way, better run fast, better not stay.
In the morning, before Kevin drove off to school, August hinted at the conversation that had taken place between himself and his son's hyperactive friend. August could tell from his son's responses that Kevin not only knew about Pete's conspiracy theories, but also knew that his father had been told of them. August collected Peter's contact information, along with everything else he could gently prod out of his son, before finally letting him leave for his classes. August felt that he had no choice but to act as if everything he had read was true. What he could confirm, based on the proof offered, all checked out, and what he was unable to verify somehow still seemed disturbingly plausible, in the larger context of the information that was available on the myriad of documents the young SEO enthusiast had handed him. Pete's phone rang out, but August left a short voicemail. "Pete, it's August McHenry. Call me back right away. I believe you. Well, part of me believes you." It wasn't all that promising, but McHenry was on his way to Gaithersburg to follow the only lead he had, some chemist that may have worked with Biotendrin Corporation on the development of this so-called angel corn The documents and proof on the flash drive that McHenry kept in his breast pocket may have been shocking, but they didn't provide much in the way of external avenues by which an outsider like McHenry could penetrate the entire conspiracy, if it indeed proved to be true. McHenry went 60 on some back road that his GPS had decided would be the fastest way to get him to the more rural fringes of Gaithersburg, where the chemist supposedly lived. "Corn," McHenry noted with disdain. "How perfect. More damn corn everywhere." As far as the old federal worker was concerned, he would be happy enough if every field of the stuff burned to the ground. Fortunately, he wouldn't feel truly sick unless he touched it usually, but the smell still disgusted him. Even the odor of corn growing nearby made his lip curl and his nose sniffle. There was a loud pop, followed swiftly by another, and then a third noise stranger than the last two. August's old Sunfire suddenly veered hard to the right. He smashed through a decaying wooden fence and began plowing through the cornfield. He slammed his foot over and over. The brakes, they weren't working. Instinctively, he tried swerving the wheel, losing some forward momentum with each turn and loop as he chaotically trampled through the cornfield. After what felt like a panicked eternity, the old Sunfire finally stopped.